Going on, everybody? Welcome back. We got a pretty cool show today. We got a special guest, Mr. Planet CHH. Christian, it's been a while since we've done one of these, man. How are you?
I'm good. I guess it has been a while since we have done one. I can't even remember the last one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we were slamming out a lot of these kind of like collab videos talking about some old school DVDs, some old school shit in the horror genre. And today is no different because we're going to talk about Platinum Dunes, which, in my opinion, is a pretty damn polarizing production company in the horror community. What do you think?
Oh, without question. Till this very day. Very, very
It's
controversial. I'd say as much as Blumhouse still. I can see it as parts of links in a chain. Like for right or wrong, I look at Dimension as the 90s horror production.
mm,
But then again, I don't know if Dimension was a production house like the way Platinum Dunes was. But my point is, like, when I think about horror in the 90s and early 2000s, I definitely think Dimension. And then when I think about horror to the mid to late 2000s, I definitely Platinum Dunes is it. That's what I think of. And then as we get into the 2000s, then I feel like it's all Blumhouse. So I kind of look at it as the next chapter of horror, like that certain era, so to speak.
it's actually kind of, you said that kind of perfectly because it really does feel that way. And what makes this so interesting is that, Michael Bay was kind of running this whole thing with like Brad Fuller, Andrew Form and stuff. But to everybody, it was like, oh, that's Michael Bay's company. And that's what it was always kind of known for. And, we know how his movies are, but he was kind of stepping into the horror world for a while, especially with this production company. And it was just kind of different at the time. And, as a horror fan, man, this started in like 2001. I think that first movie was 2003. And the reason I want to talk to you about it is because we're like different in age, but not too different in age. But when you bring it back to around that time, like we were in a completely different eras of our life, that it's like, I'm just curious on what somebody your age at that time thought about Platinum Dunes versus someone in my age. Like, I mean, 2003, like I was already in my 20s in 2003.
I think it was
So
12. Yeah.
so when this came out, I actually was super excited about it because this was kind of the dawn of like that remake era. So when all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, a remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like I wasn't pissed off at the time. I was thrilled and excited. Like what could they do with this? And the trailer looked great, I thought. And I remember going in there like at midnight the night before it came out and watching that first screening. And I freaking loved 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre like a lot back then.
Well, you also have to remember, or for not necessarily for you, but for me, it's like that era right there. Yeah, there were remakes, but it wasn't a genre, so to speak, right? I mean, yes, there was Night of Living Dead, there was The Blob, The Thing. I'm sure you can name off some others, but
The Fly.
it wasn't really a I call it I call it a genre, which I think by now you can, but like so at that point, like it was considered like a new, I guess, like a new era. Like when you say you're excited, now it's just like I'm sure I can go back to a ton of videos like, oh, well, we're getting another Texas Chainsaw movie now. They're remaking it again, which it wasn't necessarily because now we're in a different era, which is a whole different topic. But my point is, there's no subgenres of remakes now. There's requels, and like what the hell is that? But like, yeah, this was still fairly pure at the time too. So I can imagine it was super exciting for somebody your age at that point because it's just like, oh my God, all these movies I grew up loving, I get to re-experience them again for the first time,
Yeah, 100%. Seeing these things and having those theater experiences was huge. And, but, it's, you talk to most people that are really big into horror, especially that time, a lot of these things got frowned upon because they don't want their beloved Texas Chainsaw messed with, right? So you're always going to have that group of people that were like,
Sure.
oh, this is going to be the worst. Like, I don't want them touching this, which I get, to some extent, I feel that way about certain things. But back then at this time, like I was so stoked for this. And, I made a pile of some of these Platinum Dunes things, and surprisingly enough, I have every damn one of them. But we know this Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This again, we talked about another video. This had a sick ass DVD as well. That DVD that came out for this is probably one of the coolest DVDs ever. Um, and there was a lot of hype behind this thing. But what does someone who's like 12 think when they see this? Was it even on your radar? Do you remember commercials? Do you remember anything about when this came out?
For '03, yes and no. I mean, vagueness. I definitely remember going to Blockbuster and seeing it, but I had to be educated through my mom or my dad at the time. Like, I would go to look at it, and I just remember looking at the DVDs of Texas Chainsaw '03, and my mom or my dad saying, "Oh, this isn't the original. This is a new one." And at first I was just like, "Huh?" But then I learned it was just very vague. It wasn't until the prequel that I went to the theater to see that, and I started to getting the horror a little bit more. '03 though, I mean, we're talking I was 11, 12 right there. So I mean, I wasn't really ready to get into horror, watching movies in the theater and stuff yet. So just I mean, literally just seeing the VHS and DVD at Blockbuster for the first one. That was really it. And then I didn't see the movie until probably '06, '07 after I saw the beginning, which I saw first. I wasn't a part of the world yet, so to speak.
Well, it's interesting too because again, when this came out in these early 2000s, and a lot of these remakes that we're going to talk about that Platinum Dunes did, and it almost kind of became their MO. Like they were like the remake company, basically. They had a
Mhm.
couple original ones here and there, but um, like I said, seeing this, I loved it. I loved everything about it. I was like, I had a poster in my where I was living in college in that little house that I had. I had like a poster on the wall of Leatherface from this movie. Like I was really into this thing when that DVD came out. I was like so stoked, and I thought it was badass. I mean, obviously I had Jessica Biel in there. I was a huge fan of the original, so this to me was just a real cool experience. But you probably seen a lot of these remakes that they did maybe before the originals on some of these movies.
Without question.
And
Especially
did that change your opinion on not the original, but like I could see Texas Chainsaw like if you saw this one before the original, like how does that look to someone like you as a teenager that's like, oh, that this 2003 I just felt like I like better. Like what did you think seeing this first, then going back and seeing the old one?
so when I look back at that time, looking like from about 2006 to 2009, when people ask me about the Platinum Dunes era, my answer is it was literally the greatest time of my life. It was the very last era of my life where I could watch movies without being critical. And I really don't think people stop and appreciate that as much as they should. I when people wanna shit on a movie that's 15, 16 years old and say how bad, um, Friday the 13th is or stuff like that, I'm like, "But wait a minute. Don't did you not have a good time back then? Like, I was with my friends. We were young and free with no responsibility, and we got to the theater to go sit down and watch this movie, and we had a blast. We weren't talking about why the makeup wasn't as good as the final chapter, or how Derek moved too fast, or the potato sack didn't look right. It was too like we were so naive. It was so much fun. It was the greatest time of my life seeing these movies, without a shadow of a doubt. I wish, I wish so desperately I could go back and sit in a theater with my mom, sing Texas Chainsaw at the beginning. Scared the shit out of me. It was amazing. Granted, I love that movie still to this day, but forget about it. All these movies were so fun back then. It was it was just absolutely bliss to me. It was there after that era, movies have never been the same for me. And it's not that the movies haven't been good, it's that I changed. It's that I got
Mhm.
older. Then I started watching the art of movie reviews, learning what to look for, learning what to criticize. And I've never been the same. And I can't change that. I can never go back and watch movies naively anymore without being critical. I hate that sometimes, but it's the world I live in. But to answer your question, it was absolutely the greatest time of my life watching movies. I even Elm Street, which I don't like much at all, I had a fucking blast. It was
Mhm.
incredible seeing that in the theater. I miss it so much.
I think that was why, I really want to do this with you because again, it's such a different view. Now, Texas Chainsaw, loved it. But by the time we got to Elm Street, I mean, at that point, dude, I was like,
2010.
yeah, man, like I had my own place at that point. I had a family, like not a full family, but it I was in such a different place at that point that when I saw Elm Street, it was like, holy shit, like this is fucking
It's
terrible.
right.
Like that's where my head was at that point. And then every time I saw Platinum Dunes around that time, I was like, oh, here we go again. And there are some of these that I really do still like and still appreciate and still had fun in the theater, even though, being part of message boards and stuff back then, it was like no matter what they put out, it was getting shit on right from the get go.
Mhm.
So, even being a horror fan, admitting like, oh, I didn't mind it, I liked it, was sometimes even worse back then with not platforms like we have now, where you put that in a message board and it was like game over, man. Like, you're just getting attacked by these horror fans left and right. But Texas Chainsaw definitely opened a door for a lot of these to come through, and I had a blast with them. These were like, you know, friends, like you said. Even though I was in my 20s, I was in college. We used to go and watch every one of these the night they came out because we were still horror fans, and it was like this is what we were getting, and this is around times of Saw, Hostel, all that. Like, but every weekend I felt like we were at a theater at midnight on Thursday watching one of these things,
Yep.
and it was great. Look back on it now, I don't have the same memory I have for some of these movies, but I will say they talk about their first one. Texas Chainsaw to me is still one that I do enjoy, and I say that all the time. You can look at my rankings, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Still have a love for this movie, and like you said before, when people see money and something worked, they're gonna keep doing it. And I think that's what Platinum Dooms really did, because their next movie after this was another remake, and it was for Amityville Horror, which was a very interesting one for me because at that point Ryan Reynolds was, he was starting to kind of rise. I was excited for Amityville Horror because I'm such a huge fan of the original. And that's another movie that I think does not get enough love. Not talking about the remake, I'm talking about the OG. Was me growing up, that was a classic horror movie, and now I feel like it kind of gets put off to the side as like, it's not really as good as everybody thought it was. What is your thought on the OG Amityville? And
I really like the original Amityville. I'm a little too critical of it because I do think 2 says "Hold my beer." I don't know if how familiar you are with The Possession. I really do think that one truly it's one of the best horror sequels to me ever.
oh, part two?
Yeah.
I love part two.
So
Yeah.
I do think sometimes I dominate my thought process with just saying, "Oh, but part 2." But no, I love the original Amityville. I As I got older, my ADD wore down and I became more of a chill guy, and I could sit here and talk for 4 hours. So I don't need movies to move like a freight train like I
Mhm.
used to. I used to meet everything back then used to literally be like the movie Rat Race, right? Remember that movie? Like
Oh
that's how I
yeah.
needed every movie to be. So as I got older, uh maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, start going back and revisit those movies, and I love the original Amityville. I think it's a classic.
Yeah,
Um,
it's top tier for me as well, and it's slow burn horror, and I don't think we get enough of that. And like you said, I grew up watching, the original Dawn, Amityville. Like these were all considered classics to me by my uncle, and he's instilling in me like these are such classics. So to me, they were always classics. But then someone like you, who are seeing some of these for the first time, where things are a little more balls to the walls, then having to go back, I'm like, this thing is freaking slow as shit.
yeah, which I did see Amityville Horror on DVD in 2006, going over to one of my so Katrina hit, there it is. Katrina hit in '05. So this movie came out probably right around the time Katrina hit. I don't remember the date, what day it came out. April
Uh,
15th, so it was a little bit
yeah,
before. Katrina, April 15th it came out. Katrina hits in, August, I think, late August, which it's about to be 20 years this year,
I
which
can't even, I can't even believe you were in that either. That still
yeah,
boggles my mind.
20 years. So, I remember after we kinda settled where I was now, you know, somewhere around 2006, I'm settled in. I started dating this girl, went to her house, and her parents had rented us an Amityville Horror, 2005. At that point, it was just a movie. It wasn't a remake. This was the Amityville Horror. Okay, what is this? I didn't know what it was, but it was a big horror movie. at the time. And at the time, until this day, I picked up that 4K of Amityville because I had a DVD of it. I didn't have a Blu-ray of it. Dude, there are moments in that remake that are fantastic. I mean, fantastic. There's a moment in the remake where Ryan's in the bathroom. No, the kid's in the bathroom. And, the dad's already kind of started to get a little loopy, started getting mean, right? But there's a moment where the kid has to go pee, runs into the bathroom, and you see this figure, this black figure. It looks like it's a completely charred human with these blue eyes. And it would till this day when I watch it, I was like, God damn, because I completely forgot about that. The scene I remember the most was the kid having to hold the wood where Ryan was going to chop it.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me anxiety. But what I like about this movie is it takes risks. Like it does different things. They show you stuff. They add elements to the story, but they still keep the heart of what the story was about. And the woman in this film, I'm a grown ass man. I'm sorry, I forget the actress's name. It was Melissa George, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. She is perfect in this movie. I thought it was a good movie. I still think it's a good movie. This was, I think, Platinum Dunes firing at all cylinders. I actually think if you look at their entire catalog, you have to put Amityville Horror up there as one of their best ones they've done. I do. And I think Ryan was great in it. It's harder, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
harder now watching it because of how funny he is and how he's,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the comedy guy, right? Or at least in some aspects, because he's stuff he does is funny, even the superhero stuff. But back then, he was creepy.
Yeah. So this was one that I was stoked for because of the same thing. I mean, I've always been a fan of Ryan Reynolds, so that was one. Number two, I'm a huge fan of Amityville, so I'm like, oh my god, what are they going to do with this? And when I saw this in the theater, I actually really, really liked it a lot. Um, and then when I got this DVD, I watched it again, and I kind of changed my mind on it. There are elements of it I think that work. I think he does really well. It's actually kind of cool to see him in this kind of role instead of just the same old Ryan Reynolds that we're used to. But the part on this that I really started to not enjoy was I think what made Amityville work is that they didn't show you much where like this had like that thing that was going on around this time where like they turn around and like you see the ghost or you see the
The jump
possessed kid
scares
or
scene, yeah.
whatever, like, and they're do like a weird voice. Like, remember when the babysitter was in the closet and she turns around and like Jody was there and like said something to her or whatever, and it had like a lot of that like 2000s ghost like horror. I like the original because you don't get you have to use your imagination to kind of figure out what's going on, and so I kind of lost a little bit of love for this movie, but it has been quite a while since I've seen it. And that's why I haven't even upgraded this DVD to anything else because it was one that I kind of fell out of love with after I saw it for the second time. But when I did see it that first time, I really left that theater being like, all right, cool. They're knocking it out of the park, these Platinum Dunes guys. And
Hmm.
what they also did, and which I've noticed in a lot of their movies, is they, in the 2000s, and they may have been one of the people that were the originators of this, is like that almost like that, what is it, over undersaturated look that all these movies had? Is that what is that? Is that what it is, where it's almost got like that weird dull, like it almost could look slightly black and white, but it's not like all those movies had. I think 28 Days Later had it, like a lot of these this weird color tones back then in these movies where it made everything look super gritty.
It was, yeah. I think that was just the sign of the times. Looking back, um, I, James Wan was doing that too, and the most annoying film of his, even though I liked the movie, was the one with the puppets. Came out around that time, 2006 or 7. Dead, you know what
Oh,
I'm talking about.
the one with
Dead
Mary Shelley
Silence.
or whatever.
Dead
Yeah,
Silence.
Dead Silence. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Man, it's almost like he desaturated the entire movie, or like obviously he did, but it's like watching it back. It's just some of it's just like sometimes it can kind of work for aesthetic, but other times just like, oh god, this would have been so much better had they just not fucked with the color.
I think, I mean, I don't again, I don't have the 4K, but I remember Amityville feeling like that too. And a lot of these movies, it was kind of what they were doing around this time. Like it was popular. So I can even remember as a kid or, in my 20s watching these, I was like, oh, I love this cool, like gritty look that they're putting on all these movies.
Mhm.
Now, when I go back and watch it, I'm like, man, that takes away so much for me now. Like, I don't like when they look like that. Like, it's weird. At the time I
Yeah.
did. Now I look back and I'm like, man, I wish it would just be just normal looking.
I don't remember because I watched Amityville back this past October or September, whatever it was. I don't remember that one having that much of an issue with that.
Do you know if they do any color timing to the new 4K? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I'd have to go back and find my DVD and watch
Mm-hmm.
it, but I don't think so. Funnily enough, when I did that review, I found out that I talked about this in my video. I was like, "Guys, I think this is one of the last horror movies to get a VHS." And so a couple people went on eBay and got it, and like, "Oh, check it out! I got it cheap." I was like, "Well, great,"
I
but
guess because
yeah, Amityville came
2005,
out.
yeah.
Amityville, that and Devil's Rejects are probably not necessarily probably rare, but I mean, they probably have some value,
Oh,
collector's
I'm sure
value,
they probably do, for
you know?
sure. Oh, yeah,
So
100%. But I assume Amityville did well in the theaters. I can only
I can tell you
imagine it
right now.
probably was
Oh,
successful.
wow. So just for reference sake, Texas Chainsaw cost 9 mil according to Wikipedia. So after marketing and stuff, probably around 15, 20, and it made well over 100,000. This one as well, 19 mil is what it's saying for the budget, and well over 100 million. 100 million, not thousand, 100 million. It hit over 107 million in the box. So it slayed. It was a smash success.
So, again, they're looking at what they're doing and said, "Shit, this shit's working, let's continue on," and a couple years later, we got the sequel/prequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with The Beginning, um, which, again, for me, loved it, loved it. People always ask me, "Which one do you like better?" I don't know which one I like better, but I will say I still enjoy both of them. And they kind of have that desaturated look that I was talking about. I feel, but there's something about it. I like the way the stories connect. I think it kind of works. You get to learn, how that guy became the sheriff, how that dude lost his legs. I mean, I like that everything kind of intertwined and kind of finished a story that, or showed you the story before the story ended. And I don't know. I was always a fan of the beginning as well. And saw it in theaters first night, opening night, loved it.
I got to see this in theaters too, and I think this is probably one of the best horror remakes, and I can tell you exactly why. If you watch Texas Chainsaw '03 and you look what you're watching the movie and you see some of these weird aspects about this. You see the guy with no legs, you see this,
Mhm.
and you say to yourself, how did this guy become a cop? He's effing deranged, right?
Right.
So it's one of those things where you say, whoa, 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 hold up, hold up. Let's go back a chapter. Well, that's literally what they did. It went back a chapter. Because clearly, if you try to go back to the real beginning and do what they did in 2017, it it went over like a fart in church. Like
Mhm.
nobody liked that
Mhm.
movie. And they were like, what are you guys doing? This is ridiculous. Nobody liked the 2017 movie when they actually tried to talk about the beginning. Which granted they could have done a different story. That was just wild what they did. But I think gun to the head, this is the best Platinum Dunes movie, in my opinion. To me, I love the beginning. You asked me earlier what I thought about these movies. Like I said, experiencing them, all of them, pretty much all these. Are you kidding me? It was the greatest time of my life. I loved it. I was so naive. I had nothing else to judge. I had nothing else to compare it to. I was just watching these movies for what they were, movies, and I loved them. And when I saw the beginning in theaters, my mom, me, my brother, my one of my buddies that I was in like a little rock band with, him, his mom, we all went. It was like we took up a whole row at the theater. We all went to go see the beginning, and it just it rocked the house. It was amazing seeing it in theater. It was, I mean, at that time too, I was 2006, I was 15, 16, whatever. Scared the hell out of me. It was so fun. Maybe I was 15 at best, but I know I wasn't driving yet, but it was amazing, the theater experience, and I loved it so freaking much. But as I got older and became a bigger horror fan, obviously, and now I look at the original as the greatest horror movie of all time. My issues with '03 is it's a personal preference. I like how Leatherface isn't really a slasher villain, a monster, if you will.
Mhm,
He's reactive. He's scared. He acts out of fear.
mhm,
I felt the beginning did a better job of making that character be more along that line, which is a personal taste. But I also just like the look of the movie. When I think of '03, I kind of think more of like the color green, but when I think of '06, I think of like burnt orange and brown and the color palette of that movie. I'm in love with it. I just love it so much. I think Sheriff Hoyt, Arlie Ermy is even
mhm.
funnier in '06, which to Toby has always said the original Texas Chainsaw is supposed to be funny. That's what he said. So I like the fact that I thought '06 was a little funnier. I like I have a brother close to the same age as me, so I love the aspect of those two. I just related to that with the draft card, and he didn't want to go, and the brother's like, I'm doing this for you. I don't want to go back either. I related to the story more with the brothers in the beginning. I just thought '06 was absolutely fantastic. And it was
Mhm.
genius what they did, because if they would have gone to the beginning, we'd be having a different conversation right
Yeah,
now.
that's why I like it too, because it really does feel like, when you're watching a movie and you can kind of be like, oh, that's why. And it makes you feel good. Like you're kind of learning a little bit more about this family. Now, of course, there's elements to these I don't care for. I think the family was too big. I think there was a lot of characters that are unnecessary. The little boy with the teeth in the remake still kind of is a little bit silly to me. But I definitely love these. I can appreciate them now, especially with all the different Texas Chainsaw stuff that we've got throughout the years. Like I can say these two hooked them together, like are one of my favorite out of everything we've gotten. And I think we've talked about this before is what makes Texas Chainsaw original so good is it feels dirty, it feels gritty, it feels uneasy. And I kind
Mhm.
of feel like to some extent these movies kind of can make you that like make you feel that as well. And I don't know if it's just the hot of like the Texas hot or the Texas heat. Like there's something about these that makes me feel like, it's dangerous. And you don't get that a lot in movies. And they were able to kind of capture that, in my opinion, in these two. And I know they're not, universally loved by many, many horror fans, but I think too it has to really do with, where you were in time and your fandom when these things came out, because they were huge hits for me and my friends. And like I said, I was in college at that time. Yeah, I'm happy with it. To me, this was like three in a row. Oh, this Platinum Dooms is doing some good shit for horror back in the day. But that was '06, and I say this about anything, directors, this, that, and this. When you give me first like three bangers, like the fourth one is kind of it's gonna be good, right? Like I say that with Jordan Peele. I'm like, I loved his first three. I really did. So I'm like, this next one that he does has to be good, or it's like, I don't know if it was just luck or what, but like look at Shyamalan. His first three, money. Four is where shit really started to get bad. And I don't think he's ever recovered from that.
No.
And I know it's not the same director or anything like that, but as the company, you always talk about Michael Bay and Platinum Dunes, and these were his first three releases in the horror genre. Yeah, they were remakes, and I was like, let's see what he does next. He still went that damn remake route, man. And in 2007, he gave us The Hitcher from Platinum Dooms here, and this was another one. I'm a huge mark for The Hitcher, always have been. So when this was announced, of course, I was like, holy shit, I gotta go check this out. Now, Hitcher's interesting because at the time I saw this, I really didn't like it. I remember leaving the theater and being like, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. But after watching it again not too long ago, I was kind of like, this is actually not
It's
that
not
bad.
that bad, right?
No,
I
like
just watched it too.
the dude's fierce, man. Like it leaves you
Sean
on the edge of your
Bean.
seat. You're freaking out. Like, there's times where like, especially when the cops are like blaming them for everything, and like he keeps pulling one over on them, and it's like, he shoots the cop, but it makes it look like she shoots the cop, and
Mhm.
you're kind of getting stressed out here. And I thought the movie actually was way better when I saw it like a year ago than I remember being when I saw it for the first time
Right.
back in 2007. So I think this might be a sleeper, and I don't even want to compare it to the original because it's different. But he did a great job in this role.
I agree. I thought, yeah, Sean Bean was really good. So I remember when you messaged me about this, I said, I gotta watch The Hitcher. which I think I paid a couple bucks for it on Amazon because I don't remember if it was streaming or not, but
Hmm.
I ended up enjoying it. I ended up enjoying it, and I thought what I really liked was the soundtrack as well. And then subsequently when I was watching the movie, I looked it up, and Steve Jablonsky, who did some of the scores for some of these other movies, dude, his music is so effing underrated. The music he makes for these movies, especially some of the ones we'll talk about later. But yeah, I thought this movie was good. I kind of want this movie to get a reappraisal. I think it's time. It's almost 20 years old. I think some of these need a reappraisal. Not necessarily Texas Chainsaw at the beginning, because that movie's kind of stayed, especially '03. But
Hmm.
some of these, including Amityville, with you, for instance, I think they need a reappraisal to go back and watch them. It's a different time now. It's a different era. You've been exposed to uh 7, 8 years of Blumhouse now,
I
so
right, yeah.
Platinum Dunes may be a breath of fresh air to you.
It feels this does because I watched a couple of these again for the show. This does feel like a lot more gritty though back then. Like Blumhouse seems so much more polished,
Yeah.
and this seems like way more rough around the edges, and it makes it feel like a little more, like I said before, dangerous of a movie. Where the ones now, it's like way too polished. Sometimes it's just hard to even like feel anything from it. Like I don't know, something about this was just gritty back then. Like the way it looked, and it was a different time. So things were said and things were violent. I mean, it was, the language and stuff is very different in these movies than they are now. And the stuff people were saying and stuff, it just feels a lot more rough. And I do think Hitcher is actually pretty decent. And I'm will not be surprised that this doesn't get announced from like Screen Factory or something very soon. Um, because I don't think this has even a Blu-ray. I don't know, does it?
Let me see. I can tell you right now.
But again, it's the only one I have is this DVD still, and um, I think at least with a re-release, it might give itself a new audience because people are talking about the Hitcher because it's finally released on physical media. So,
There is an
oh,
HD disc for The Hitcher,
is there really?
but it's HD DVD.
Oh, wow!
And
And
there's an
on
Australian
Blu-ray,
Blu-ray.
it's still stuck on HD DVD, huh? That
There's an
and Black
HD
Christmas.
DVD.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Wow.
dude. So I enjoyed The Hitcher. I'd give it like probably a 5.5 or 6 out of 10. Like, and which might be a little bit of a stiff of a rating, but like it's really not that bad. I mean, I think Rutger Hauer is, for all intents and purposes, The Hitcher, but I thought Sean Bean was really good. And I liked his approach to it. Um, and like you said, it's definitely gritty. But the thing about it, it's like even though these were remakes, and even though it was like grindhousey and gritty, I don't have the impression that they were trying to be retro at that time. I
No,
think
no,
that really
they
was
were.
just the style. It was
Yeah, yeah,
aggressive, hard R ratings. I mean, hard R ratings. Now it's just like I feel like movies barely get rated R ratings, right? But back then it was just
yeah.
like we're gonna push it. We're gonna go to the brink of that rated R. That's the way I feel about those movies back then. Because even still, dude, I still feel like a lot of those 2000 films kind of like whip some of these rated R movies today's ass in terms
Oh,
of just
it's because things were you could get away with some. I mean, that was, we were on the Attitude Era was around this time, right? Like this shit was society was just so different. Like, I mean, Dimension Extreme, all those movies that came out through that line, like Hostels, like things were different then. It had way more of an edge than it does now, and they didn't really, you know, it's almost like they didn't give many shits back then. Where now I think they play it a little bit safe sometimes, not to offend anybody or
yeah,
something. This time they didn't give a shit.
they didn't.
And I do think looking at these four movies, like back in the day, I would have said, "Oh, I like Amityville better than I like Hitcher." I think now, I think I enjoy Hitcher than more than I did Amityville. But it's been a little while since I've watched Amityville. But yeah, I think this is a sleeper because I never liked it until like about a year ago when I rewatched it. I was like, "Damn, like it's pretty sick." And
And
girl's
the
good looking in this movie too, by the
A
way.
absolutely, and the interesting thing is the guy that directed this, his name is David Myers. All he's really done in his career is commercials. He has done hundreds of commercials. He's done commercials for NFL Network, Mercedes, Lowe's commercials, Kmart commercials, Hummer, House of Fraser, GMC commercials, Gatorade commercials, Fujifilm, ESPN, Doritos. and he's done basically a couple movies. So him doing The Hitcher is really like his only big kind of movie. He did a
Mm,
comedy in '99 called Foolish with Master P, but like other than that, this guy doesn't really have much of a filmography. He's a commercial expert.
that's interesting.
So they I don't know what they're I guess it worked, but they were like, we need somebody that has like a snappier kind of editing style in mind for this. I guess, you know.
Hmm,
So
that's
that's
interesting.
wild.
Yeah, for sure. And going back, like I said, to when I saw this in the theater, I was kind of like, oh, I didn't really care for it that much. And then the next thing they released, um, I went to the theater too because I wasn't sure what this was. I'm like, is this a remake or not? I don't think it's a remake at all. I just think it has a similar name as an old movie. Um, and it was The Unborn, which I hated when I saw this, and I rewatched it a couple days ago for the show, and it still sucks so bad.
I was gonna say this is the
Um,
first one I can't say anything good about, but it was, dude, I couldn't get away from it in high school. Like I could not get away from that DVD.
was this
It
a
was everywhere.
popular oh, the DVD was like, yeah, every Blockbuster, it's always sitting around there, but I'm sure everybody remembers this cover. It's just I don't know. I think this might have been what their first real try to be original movie, even though it was called Unborn, which is also another horror movie from I think believe the 80s or the 70s. But it's not really the same. I don't think. But this was like that ghosty, big mouths, ghost kids kind of shit. It was not
Mirror stuff,
not
yeah.
good at all. Um, I'm trying to see if this does say if this was considered a remake of the old movie. I doubt it, but it's not good. This is where they really started to shit the bed for me. Where when I saw Platinum Dunes, I was like, oh no, here we go.
It's just a shame too. It's just like I'm gonna assume it is an original film for all intents and purposes because I have no idea about any other Unborn. But it was one of those things, man. Like I was so this came out. What was the date? Beginning of 2009. So I had jobs and stuff by then, and by this point, I was into horror movies now. And I just remember buying like around the summer of 2009, everywhere I went, because this is when everybody still sold DVDs. I mean, I would go when I would go to a big city near me, they had a Kmart, which is dating us, but I'd go to Kmart, Unborn DVDs. They have a row of them, or a whole row. Walmart, a huge. I think they even had a cardboard thing for them. Like it was, they pushed it. And same thing with Blockbuster. I couldn't get away from it, so I finally bought it, and even back then, it was just underwhelming. Like
Mm.
I just was like, this isn't really that great, and
Did it make money?
it did. It was still
Did it?
successful, but it got obliterated by critics,
Hmm.
just obliterated, and it was by Rogue Pictures, which was their first of two, I think, partnerships with
Mhm.
working with Rogue Pictures.
Yeah, I think the pitcher was Rogue as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so Unborn, I would not recommend at all. This is where, I can understand. Again, I think it's definitely a controversial production company. It's polarizing amongst horror fans, but I think you and me are a little bit different in the sense that people that are going to watch this will be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they just put over 4 of these 5 movies," to an extent, because I know a lot of horror fans are going to hate on all of these remakes.
right, and
But
fair enough.
for whatever
That's
reason,
you know,
I don't mind them.
I wonder if this is like just the first kink in the armor for them, because
I think it was. I think that's 100% what it was. It was the first kink, but people didn't like Black Xmas either. They hated that when it came out. But then when Black Christmas came out in 2019, they look
it's
at
all of
Black
a
Xmas
sudden
now
it's a
like,
classic.
yeah, now all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, this was great. And I think that that's going to happen a little bit more now is like when people saw the recent Texas Chainsaw, maybe they look back on 2003 and be like, yeah, that one wasn't that bad actually. I don't know, but I feel like what we get now is not even close, the caliber of this. And even going to like Halloween, like I always was a Halloween fan, Rob Zombies. A lot of people don't like it, but I always did. I don't compare it because it's silly to do that, but you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's more going to be more appreciative after the Blum ones, and I don't
I
know.
know
It's
I
weird.
know some people. I do know some people. I remember B Movie Mike was on used to do shows with Piz on all
Yeah,
that
I know. I
Region
remember
3.
him. Yep.
Yeah, and he was just like he hated all the Blumhouse ones. He's like, "You know what? At least Rob just like did his own thing. Like all they did was not make them brother and sister, and that's supposed to
Mhm.
be original." He's got a point. I mean, it's not original.
And
Like
to be honest,
that's your
they
big
didn't even need to.
change?
They didn't need even need that made no difference to those movies at all.
No.
All it did was let's take away part two because that story doesn't make sense
Because
now.
Johnny doesn't like it because he was
Yeah,
drunk
and
writing it. Well, sorry, buddy.
to be honest, part two could have stayed in that whole thing and actually would have made a better little franchise if you had part two. They stayed brother and sister. Nothing had to change in this new one. They don't ever talk about it besides one scene. So I don't know. I was always kind of a gripe with those with me, but yeah, Unborn really soured me. And it still does. I think it's shit. Um, but it's part of their small library of horror films that they put out back in the 2000s. But same year, they released another remake. They're like, shit, we go back to the remakes. And what better franchise to do a remake for than Friday the 13th? And
Mhm.
it's my favorite of the big three franchises personally. So I've always been a huge mark for Friday the 13th. And when they announced this, I was so excited. I remember meeting Derek Mears like maybe a couple months before this came out. And I talked to him about it. And, he was so stoked for it and had him sign like some posters and stuff like that. But I brought this one to the table just because it's the one I had closest to me, but great addition by Arrow.
Oh, yeah.
I know we both did reviews and shit on this thing, but um I still like this movie, man. There's problems with it, of course. There's things that I'm like, I would have rather seen this, this, this. I think Derek Mears is a fantastic Jason. I felt like Jason had a great look in this one. Um, I have no issues with this movie at all. I know there are issues, and I know there was issues even making this movie, which didn't help. But to me, if I look at the whole library of Platinum Dooms, I'm like, this is one of the better ones for me.
I totally agree. I really enjoy Friday '09. I've actually grown to love it even more now than I did back then, and just a fantastic experience. That obviously that no, it wasn't. I saw Jason X as a kid in the theater, which is funny because a lot of people didn't see that one. That's the one I saw in the theater. I didn't see Freddy versus Jason because my mom was like, "No, you cried like a baby in Jason X. I'm not taking you to see that in the theater." So yeah, I enjoyed it in the theater, and it was funny because like at that point, even though I loved it, like I said, still so naive. The idea back then of Jason taking a prisoner, it used to throw me off. But then as I got older and I became a bigger fan and I would watch the movies, I was like, well, it doesn't really not make sense. I mean, I get it. He thought that was his mama. It
Hmm.
reminded him of his mama. That's the whole thing, right? So like I get it now. I get that's what they were doing. And obviously the guys who wrote the movie are big fans. Like I really like it. I think if you're looking for a brutal slasher film of Jason in the woods, right or wrong, that's it. That's what it is. And I've always been this kind of person. This is just me. And it's not necessarily a Friday the 13th. The whole thing of, like, I hated all the characters, I just like, well, do you have to like all these people to watch the movie and enjoy the situations they're in? What does that mean? Do you need to be able to get a coffee with these people? Do you have because that's always a thing I scratch my head at. I hear it all the time with movies. I hated all the characters. What do you mean you hated them? Like, yeah, guess what? I don't like Ted Bundy either, but I thought the guy who played him did a good job in that movie. Like in 2000, like the Vinegar Syndrome one, I just
Yeah,
watched
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
a good
I
one.
don't like him either. I don't want a
Mhm.
coffee with that guy, but I thought he did a good job. So I never understood that. I hear it all the time, but of course I hear it for this movie a lot. Like,
Now,
oh,
do
I
they not like
hated
the
it.
characters because they were too stereotypical, or didn't like the people who played them, or what was the problem? I don't really know.
Your guess is as good as mine. Probably
Did it-
too stereotypical, but I mean, guess who invented the
Yeah,
stereotypical
I
movie?
mean, you could
Friday
tell
the
that they were
13th did
really
that.
trying to hammer it on a lot of these later Fridays, though. I mean, you can even look at Jason X, Jason versus Freddy. I mean, you can pinpoint that they're really trying to go over the top with some of these
Right.
stereotype characters.
But I
Um,
I argue anybody to go back and tell me Aaron Yu, the Asian guy, is not hysterical. Shoot the boot. Like he's sitting in the back of the SUV while they're traveling. He doesn't even get a seat. I thought Aaron Yu was awesome. I mean, he was way better in this than in Nightmare, which don't get me started on his scene in Nightmare, where he's the guy talking about like having nightmares on the computer and he somehow uploaded getting killed. Like so he somehow exported that video and then uploaded it to a website. Don't get me started on that. But I thought Aaron Yu was great in this movie. I mean, that's just me.
I didn't have any issues with this movie except, I still at the same time, like, I don't understand what the traps and shit were for or whatever. Like that part when I first saw it in the theater, I was like, what do you mean he's making traps? Like, I don't get it. Why was he doing? But it is what it is. I actually I prefer this, and this might get a lot of hate, but I prefer this over Jason X and Jason vs. Freddy. I think I even did that in my ranking. I think I had this ahead of those two. For some reason, those two don't work for me anymore. Actually, I don't think that they work for me ever, to be quite honest with you. It
Yeah.
didn't like it. Just even the like Jason vs. Freddy, I was excited for it. It was a big deal, but like I don't know, making Jason kind of the baby face and having Kelly Rowland in there, having that like weird like stoner guy. I didn't care for that movie really at all. And Jason X, I can appreciate it, and it was exciting to see in the theater, but I wouldn't put it as one of my favorites in the franchise. They're actually probably my two least. So this definitely for me is above them because I do think that Derek Mears is like he was such a fantastic Jason. Um,
Sensational. Sensational.
and it's sad because I really really wanted to see more of him, and I thought for sure, and I think he thought for sure that there would have been more of this for him. I mean, imagine signing on to be Jason. You must assume in your head there's going to be a freaking couple of these, and to be one and done is just very very strange. But we know why. We know the issues with that. But
Yeah, we're lucky we got that movie
mhm.
because at that time, Paramount still had some rights with the title and everything, and New Line had the character of Jay, but New Line just started making it. Sean talked about this, and I forgot what interview it was, but Sean talked about the Cunningham. New Line just started making the movie, and Paramount was like, "What are you doing? You guys don't have the you can't even call your movie Friday the 13th." And so thankfully, because the movie already started, they were like, "Well, fuck, let's figure this out." And so Paramount got distribution across the globe. New Line got distribution in America. So that's why if anybody looks at a poster of Friday '09, you will see a Paramount and a New Line logo. You will. You'll see both logos on that poster. Uh, but that's definitely why we didn't get a sequel. There's no way in hell they were going to go back to the drawing board and come up with another deal, which is a shame. But I think '09 is a good slasher film. I think Marcus Nispel did a great job. I think he was the right guy for the job. Quite frankly, I'll be honest with you. I wish they would have brought him in for Elm Street as well. I think he would have done a hell of a lot better job on that. But yeah, I mean, this was like, and this movie slammed at the. I think this movie
Mhm.
beat Halloween.
I
Like it
mean,
was a
but Friday
huge
the 13th
success.
always does well, right? Like it always does. And that's what's so sad that this has been so tied up for so long. It's like, man, think about the money that could have been made, not only just as fans and the excitement of it, but like people involved. Like I get it. Like everybody wants, to have their piece of the pie, but it's like, man, it's a tragedy that this has been hung up for so
Yeah.
long and when it comes to merchandising and products and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, the budget was a little different, couple million off. Halloween was a little bit cheaper, but yeah, Friday got really close to $100 million, which is just insane. You know,
Now,
and,
how did that do in comparison to the rest of their stuff? Like, did you say that was more than Texas Chainsaw made? To had to be,
uh,
right?
no, no, Texas was better. You have to remember, Texas cost $10 million,
Oh,
nearly
okay,
$10
yeah,
million less, and still broke 100. And dude,
yeah.
Amityville rocked the house at the box office.
Which is
Amityville
wild
slammed.
because Amityville horror by name isn't something that you would think people would be. Oh, I know that movie.
I think it was just the right time. I think it was it was the right time. I think from the people who brought you the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Amityville Horror. I think it was just it just
Starring
you,
Van Wilder. You think
you
that's
know
people were like all excited? And they're like, hell yeah, let's go. Let's
you
check it
know
out.
I think they probably. I what else was we weren't into it wasn't necessarily the James Wan era yet. We were not
Mhm.
in the, it was he had released Saw, but I think people were just ready and they were going to the theater. You had to go to the theater, there what you
Mhm.
couldn't. So I don't know. Man, like I said, I wish I could go back and relive that one more time. Just
It
one
was
more
some fun
time.
stuff back then. Even like, ones that people don't even consider, like when you talk about remakes, people don't usually classify these like, oh, the remake of, but they were remakes and they were good. House on Haunted Hill was a little bit before this.
Yeah.
13 Ghosts, a lot of
Mhm.
those movies that came out around that
That movie
time.
scared the shit out of me as a kid.
House of Wax. Oh man, I loved all that shit. Those were
Yeah.
those were big for me around this time. And they were all remakes. So
It is worth
it was the thing to do.
Yeah, it is worth noting too. Now, this is not Platinum Dune, so we can't really talk about this per se, but at this time, the show Supernatural really got its legs. And I've become a huge fan. I love Jared Padalecki and I love Jensen Ackles. I love those guys. Those guys are great actors. Jensen's fantastic. Jensen's also he lives in Texas. He's just a musician. He's a cool ass dude. Now he does the show The Boys or something. They're huge. Now those guys are, I mean, they go to conventions like the Comic
Mhm.
Cons and thousands of people want to meet them. But the show The Supernatural, which I love, which you would love if you haven't seen, I'm
I've
sure
never
you at
seen it.
least when this show came out, the first 5 or 6 seasons, it's 2000s horror movies as a TV show.
Hmm.
There's episodes where it's killer clowns or it's like there's zombie stuff, and then it's all about demons. It's all like they're demon hunters. It's so effing good. But anyway, that the show really got its legs around that time, and the Supernatural brothers, Jensen and Jared, both had massive movies that year. Jared at Padalecki obviously was Friday the 13th. He was the guy looking for the sister, big dude, kind of long hair, like my
Mhm,
about my
mhm,
length. And Jensen Ackles was in, which I think is the better one, My Bloody Valentine. Oh nine.
mhm.
He played I don't want to spoil it, but I think everybody's seen it by now, but he plays the guy that's the killer. He's the guy that comes back into town and he's having the hallucinations and he's the one, so they both had huge horror remakes that they were in that year with My Bloody Valentine and Friday the 13th.
That's interesting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
again, it just goes to show how much of those remakes were out back then. I totally forgot
Oh, there's
Bloody Valentine.
we're only scratching. I don't even think we're scratching the surface because there were a lot of. It wasn't Platinum Dunes. A
No,
lot of
I mean,
people
you
got
had a
involved.
lot of them like freaking Prom Night and Sorority House
April
and all that
Fool's
other
Day had a
shit. April
remake.
Fool's
Mother's
Day,
Day,
yeah.
like the one with Edward Furlong, where he
Oh,
Night of
yeah,
the Demon.
Demons,
Like,
Night of
dude,
Demons, yeah. It's crazy.
matter of fact, I'm still kind of learning about because I didn't know there was a Night of the Demons remake till like 4 or 5 years ago.
It's actually a really pretty damn good one
Oh, I
too.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Doesn't get talked
So
about a lot, but it is a fun one for sure.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, that was '09, and
it was huge.
then this is an interesting one because I didn't see this in the theater. I have it, but I have no recollection of this movie, man. So if you've seen this, you're gonna have to help me out.
Horseman.
Horseman.
No,
I found it in my collection. I'm like, I'm looking at the back. I'm like, I don't have any recollection of this at all.
I think it barely got any sort of theater release
Dennis
and just
Quaid.
kind of. No, I've never seen that. But I gotta say, dude, I am and have always been a big Dennis Quaid fan. And I think he's underrated as an actor. I think obviously a lot of people think of Randy,
Mhm.
but Dennis is good. And I think if anybody got to see The Substance, they would see Dennis has great comedic timing and as well.
So
I
good.
think Dennis is pretty underrated. Yeah, his brother is obviously cousin Eddie. He was in Independence Day. Like Randy is huge still this day, even though he doesn't really do movies because he's a little cuckoo in the head. But I think
Mhm.
Dennis is really good. So I'd be inclined to think that that movie's probably not half bad. I haven't seen it though.
I I had to have probably watched this, but I really have like looking at the back. I'm like,
Looks like
I
the number
don't
23
recall.
cover.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing too. Around this time, so many of these horror movies came out that it's like to me they could all be so intertwined that I really can't remember what I thought of this thing. But I don't think it probably was anything. amazing, or I would have probably remembered it. But hey, maybe it's decent. It's gonna be one I wanted to rewatch. I really wanted to try to rewatch it before or watch it before we did this show, but I just couldn't get to it. But anybody out there that's watching, let us know, like, is Horseman a decent movie? Garbage? Like, but make sure you're honest. Don't just say garbage, but make sure you've seen this thing. I'm gonna check it out and hopefully I'll have an opinion soon. But that was kind of leading into one of the ones we wanted to kind of finish this off with, 2010, and that's
A
the Elm
Nightmare
Street
on Elm
remake,
Street.
which I I never liked. I didn't like it from day one. I don't like it now. Um, I don't. I wish I could tell you why. I don't really have a good answer. Um, I don't know. I mean, I just it's hard, man. I don't. I know people don't want to hear this, but it's hard for me to get behind a Freddy Krueger that's not Robert Englund. I don't know why. I think he did fine, but I think he was a little too small. I wasn't a fan of the look, the makeup. Um, I don't know what it is, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay with it. But man, you see some of this shit out there, like some of these rubber masks, and it's almost kind of like I would almost rather have a really cool Robert Englund looking mask with somebody underneath it than have a whole new kind of facial look. I don't know why, but it's something.
Well, put it to you like this. There's a reason nobody else has even gotten really a above average review as playing Pinhead,
Mhm.
including the 2022 one. Nobody thinks that even that one was that great. Doug Bradley is Pinhead. It's that simple. Are you going to tell me somebody else is going to play Rocky?
Well, that's the problem, and that's why I think stuff like Chainsaw and Halloween and Friday 13th work because we know the mask. You can throw other people under
Yeah.
there. It's still Michael Myers. It's still, the problem with Pinhead, the problem with Freddy is it's like it's a guy. And not only is just his look, but the way he acts, the way he speaks. I mean, these other characters don't have any of that. They don't have the personality like these guys do.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's why I have so much trouble with the Pinheads and the Freddys is that I just can't get past it.
Well, the second that mouth opens, it's a totally different ball of wax, right? I mean, the second that mouth opens and words come out of a character, it's no longer a visual. It's like people don't love Freddy because of just it's all about the sweater. Like, no, it's
Mhm.
not. It's not even all about the glove.
No, it's not.
It's Robert. It's that simple. It's Robert, and it's like that doesn't mean that not anybody else can play him. But the fact is, I watch it. So there's things about the remake that still trouble me till this very day. Number one, the guy in the beginning is supposed to be in high school. He looks like he's 40.
Mhm.
I mean, he looks like he's 40, and you know, granted, that was a thing for a while where it's just like everybody that was playing high schoolers looked older, but this guy, it was just impressive how like this guy's supposed to be in high school, and the opening of the movie, besides that's not bad. I actually like the way Freddy's attack, but the voice modulation stuff that they did, the fact that Freddy was actually a green screen, like there were parts of his makeup that was
Yeah, it was
green,
like like because they added CGI to the face, and I
and
think that really did not work.
and, and then what they could have done, I thought, which would have been interesting. We all know what Freddy is. He's either a child, you know what, or a child
Mhm.
M word. I'm not going to say him, but
Mhm.
really he's both, I think. Uh, and the irony is, of course, we know that he ended up becoming an icon for kids. There's
Right.
Matchbox toys. But anyway,
100%.
that's not my
Yeah.
point. My point is they hinted at doing something with this movie, which I was going to be like, wait a minute. He was going to be innocent.
Mhm.
No, this could have been a guy that died and bargained with the devil to get revenge. That's actually not a bad idea. because at least this time it feels like it's a different universe Freddy. There's something about this one that is different. And then they completely pull the rug out from you at the end. And I think that was supposed to be a, oh my God, he really is bad. Please kill them. Please, girl who doesn't talk the entire movie, who nobody gives a rat's ass about. Please kill the bad man. No, it backfired.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, other than
It's actually
that,
interesting because I never, I've only seen this movie twice, so I can't
yeah.
remember every nook and cranny of this movie. But I think you're right, and I think because there was those like scenes where I think they went back and you kind of started to feel bad for him a little bit because he was, and
Full
then
fledged. I mean, even the dream sequence that the boy has, where he's swimming. Quentin is the character's name, which he's not a bad character. I actually think he's the only thing he really kind of gets you through the movie. And mind you, I don't blame that actress Rooney Mara. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the director's fault. He wanted this girl to come across as introverted, blah blah blah, which is fine, but you have to give us something. I mean, the broad doesn't talk. She doesn't talk. I mean, what do you want me to do? She doesn't talk. But there's a scene where he kind of like has a dream. He's so exhausted. He falls asleep, he passes out while swimming. He's on the swim team. And in the dream, he comes out of like this waste pool by this factory where Freddy apparently, Freddy runs to the boiler room
Mhm.
factory, whatever. And it's a harrowing scene of all the parents chasing him in here, and he's screaming, "I didn't do it! I
Yeah.
didn't do it!" It's actually the best scene in the movie, to be honest with you. And they make the audience think this guy, he's innocent. So, and I thought that I still think that's the biggest missed opportunity because it's not like they hint at you trying to make you feel bad for him. You can't not feel bad for the guy when you
Mhm.
watch the scene. He's begging for his life. He goes, "I didn't do it." So, and then all of a sudden at the end, they pull the rug out from you, and oh, they found Polaroids. So
I know
that's the biggest
that
thing.
did seem like it was like they were really trying to go one direction and just at the last second, but fuck, we can't. So let's just do anything.
You know,
Because even when it came to like you said, they just showed Polaroids and it's like that's all we needed to believe and like not the emotion that he gave through the whole movie. You know what I mean? So it was strange, that. I mean, there was a couple good visuals in this. I will say that. I thought some of the stuff was pretty cool, but like I don't know. I don't know why. And I did not go into this, and I know, people might think that. I didn't go into this thinking I was going to hate it. I went into it giving it a fair chance. I liked him from Watchmen. So, like, at the time, I was like, oh, this is going to be pretty cool, right? Like, he's going to be Freddy. And, it didn't work. But I will say that it's such a unique thing to have this dude playing Freddy that I did get the movie poster signed by him at a convention because I was like, this is just a unique thing to have.
yeah.
Even though I'm not a fan of the movie whatsoever, but it's interesting to see that there was, so far just one person to try to reprise that role. And, obviously I'm assuming it made money, but it just didn't get great reviews, I'm sure.
I actually think it's Slade. Like it might have been the best one. I remember reading about these a while back. Okay, so in relativity, it's about the same because this one had a bigger budget up in the 30s, but it made close to 120 million. So relatively, they're all the same. But like, if you did the math, I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is still technically the most successful because it was the cheapest one. But at this point, they were clearly spending a lot more money to make these two. So I think there could have been a good movie in this, but then again, we would have to change a lot of stuff. If Freddy was innocent, first off, let's pretend that he would have been innocent, which would have been great. Then they would have had to have changed all of his dialogue because he does the like when you cut off something's head, you got 7 minutes of playtime. Like they
I
would have had to
haven't
change.
even cut you yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the voice stuff was terrible. Listen to it back, I don't like it, but I like Jackie, and I actually think if he would have been more. There's an image of this move of Jackie Earle Haley where it's a brightly lit room where he's going, and you see his face. It's all over the internet. I'm like, why isn't that in the movie? Like that's creepy. But instead, all you get is the flicking of the glove and
Yeah.
the I really don't blame Jackie. He did
No,
what the
I don't. I
director
don't blame
wanted.
Jackie either. I think he actually, for what he was given, I think from an acting standpoint, he did fine. I think there was
It's the
things
movie.
around it. I think the look, when you're seeing it up close, that CGI face mixed into the practical is weird to me.
But
It's
what are they
moving,
doing?
things are moving around and stuff. I just,
And
I think,
why did they why did they purposely, because Wes did this at first and he was like, wait a minute, this is going to be a disaster. Why did they purposely want him to look like a burn victim? They took away, you know, they took away the physical attributes, which is probably why they had to do voice stuff and everything. They probably couldn't have really captured his actual voice. Not everybody's like Bill Skarsgård, where you lock yourself away for 8 months and learn how to
mm,
talk like you're 800 years old. But like, doing the makeup like that, Wes Craven clearly was like, all right, we can't do that. We're going to make this, we have to just make him look differently. And then not only that, like, I'm just going to say it, he looks like a turtle. Like, he looks like a turtle in the face. Like, I know he's supposed to come across as an actual burn victim. He looks like a turtle. So, you know, they could have redone a lot of stuff. There is a good movie in here, but what they did ended up coming out like processed food. It was just, or just like it came out like computer create Elm Street remake.
that's really what it does feel like. If you would go to AI and said, "Make me Elm Street remake," this is kind of what I feel like would come out of it.
Yeah. But I'll say this, to be fair, without question, this is the hardest remake to do. Like,
Oh
you
God,
could
that's
have done
I
Halloween and Friday is way easier to. This was definitely the hardest one to pull off. So I
100%.
give him credit. I won't give him credit. I'll be a little bit easier on it, but even then, this is my favorite, dude. I love Elm Street. I love Freddy's Dead. I love the Dream Child. I love Elm Street. But at the same time, man, it's just like why I get angry is because I do feel there were things that are just to the average person. That if you weren't a big fan, you even said you haven't seen it but a couple times, but just me explaining it
Twice.
to you, the fact that they could have gone in a different direction that really wouldn't have hurt the legacy or upset the fans. Like, who's going to be upset if the guy was actually innocent, but
No,
he
I think it would
bargained
have
with the
been. I
fucking
mean, I'm sure
devil?
people would have been upset, but at the same time, what are you going to say? Like, I wish he did do that to those kids. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to
Checkmate.
even talk about it now. You know what I mean? Like when people,
That's the Leonardo DiCaprio. We have, you know what I'm talking about when somebody
yeah,
says
like
that.
they almost should have did that to try to like change the way he's looked at by people because Freddy Krueger is so beloved. But when you really dig deep on like his character and what he did, it's almost like, why is he so beloved? Like, this doesn't make any sense because he was such a likable character and fun character. But when you really dig into the backstory of what he was, it's not fun. So I mean, it might have been a smart move to try to change that trajectory for him.
I I don't know why they didn't do it. And apparently they seriously wanted to do a remake, but apparently Rooney Mara, it's not, nothing has ever been fully disclosed. It was either Rooney or Jackie. Somebody had it in their contract that they were supposed to do a sequel, but one of them just flat out was like, sue me, I don't give an F. I'm not
I think
doing
it
it,
was.
blah blah blah.
I think Rooney Mara has been pretty open about not liking this experience at all. Right?
True. And like I said, I don't blame her. At the end of the day, the director, if the director clearly liked her character. I think I do think that's a big thing. Now, I don't need her to be like Heather Langenkamp, but you can be introverted, but I need more. Like, there are scenes where she just sits there and she's painting and she doesn't say a fucking word. And then
Mhm.
thank God they brought in that Quentin character. That guy's in a lot of horror stuff now. I forget the actor's name. He's in everything now.
Yeah, I forget who his name
I
is too,
like
but I know
him.
who you're talking about.
Like, they should have just made the movie with Quentin. I mean, he had a better. But here's the thing: I gotta make fun of this. This is the funniest shit. Aaron Yu, who was Shoot the Boot Friday the 13th, which I still think one of the best comic relief characters of the series. I love him. They're in the library and they're freaking out because they know Freddy's coming. They pull up a website where Aaron Yu is like, I can't sleep. You
Oh,
know, the
yes,
240p video. I can't sleep. He's coming. And like the next day, they watch the second day video log. Well, at the last video, all of a sudden he's falling asleep. He goes into the camera. The video ends. Who exported and uploaded that to the internet? There wasn't live streaming back then. Like, what are you like?
Freddie
Even
did.
who Fucking, like, dude, I can forgive stuff, but like, what? Who uploaded it?
Freddy's he's into tech,
Freddie,
you know.
Freddie went.
You know, to be honest, that would have probably been a good moment if all of a sudden he had like that thing where he's like you know, upload or something like that. You know, like it probably would have worked. To be honest with you,
Like, dude, that right there, and they freak out and they're in the library, they're watching, they go, like, come on, man.
that's
But
wild.
but dude,
Uh,
Clancy Brown is in this movie. He plays Quentin's dad. Like, he's good. Clancy Brown. Who doesn't love Clancy Brown? Like, even the cast isn't really bad in this. Like, the cast I even think is fine. But what I tell you what, dude, sometimes CGI works. I really do believe CGI can be good. I think Silent Hill is my favorite CGI horror movie of all time. I love
That's funny
Silent
because
Hill.
I feel like I'm the only person that doesn't like that movie.
Fair enough, you know, but
No,
I
but it's
love
funny
it.
because when I saw that, I was like, this is so freaking bad. But to come
I
out
thought
there
it
and I
was
see so
terrifying.
many people loved it, I'm like, what did I miss with this thing?
Oh,
Now, I think I even bought it from Scream Factory. I don't even think I've opened it. So I've only seen Silent Hill once. And I
dude, that
bought
movie
it from
terrified
Scream
me.
Factory because I was collecting all the collector's editions and I was like, you know
Yeah.
what, maybe I'll give this another whirl because am I missing something that nobody else sees? Because when I saw this in the theater, I was like, this is one of the worst fucking horror movies I've ever seen.
Dude, yeah, you
But
really are the only
I
person I've
haven't
ever
seen
heard
it since
say
the
that.
theater, and I
When
I
that
still
motherfucker is tied up in the bathroom and he's going, that shit fucked me up for nights. You have to
Hmm.
watch that again. But here's what I was gonna say. I really don't like, because I don't feel like I'm not old enough. I feel like I'm a poser if I say it's practical only. Practical only. Wait a minute. Like I love Jurassic Park that's got CGI. What are you talking about? But my point is, in this movie, you cannot watch the scene, the bedroom scene where she goes up into the roof getting slapped. You cannot watch that compared to the original and say to
Oh god.
yourself, God, it's night and day just how better the practical was with her covered in blood in the original, like where she's like leaning down, where it's night and day how bad it is. Even the scene where Freddy comes out the wall,
Hmm.
there's a movie called The Frighteners with Michael J. Fox
Yep.
where there's a similar scene where this ghost comes out the bathroom wall. That movie was 1996, so that was 14 years prior. And the CGI, go watch it. Nobody has to take my word for it. Go watch that. That CGI still looked way better than the 2010 Freddy coming out the wall. It's impressive how much better it looks 14 years ago in the 90s. Granted, it was a Robert Zemeckis film, but I mean, I guess he had a few more bucks. But I mean, by this point, you think they'd have that stuff, but the
Mhm.
CGI is just like not good. It's not good. So, and right there, it's just like,
But I do, like you said, this is the hardest one, and it always will be, and that's why I think everybody's very critical on it too.
yeah,
Is again, if we never see another Elm Street movie, I'm okay personally.
me too.
I do think that it's a hard task, man. Like you can't, and if you're gonna do it, you can't remake it. You're just gonna do something different. You got to. I I don't know what we see with this, but this is more or less universally hated amongst horror fans. I would say most a high percentage. Um, so at this point, Platinum Dooms was kind of like the laughing stock, the big joke in horror, like, oh, Platinum Dooms does it's going to be garbage, and they kind of stayed silent after this for a while, a couple of years, and I mean they're still going, man, and that's what's weird. I didn't really even realize that it was still a thing, but they're really riding on that. Their two big hits, which is The Purge and
Which I had a blast in the theater with The Purge, dude.
Quiet Place. I like The Purge. I thought The Purge was fine. I like Quiet Place. I thought that was
Yeah.
good. But with all the sequels and stuff coming out, it's like it seems like that's really what they're riding on at this point. It's just sequels of these two movies.
Well,
I think Ouija was in there somewhere, but you know,
yeah, Ouija was 2014, which is not great, but then somehow Ouija Origin of Evil came out and just
better.
slapped everybody. Like
Hmm.
this is which that was Mike Flanagan, which
Hmm.
Mike Flanagan is like, it's so funny. He is the guy that fixes everybody's messes. Like he come like WWE is like, why can't we have a good horror movie? Why can't we do it? Okay, let's get this Flanagan guy a shot about a haunted mirror.
Hmm. And
Everybody
it actually
loves
was
it.
decent. Yeah.
And everybody loves it. Okay, Ouija, like one of the most iconic properties in the world of whatever you call it, the world of horror, the world of board games, whatever. Everybody knows what a Ouija board is. Like, movie comes out and it's cookie cutter, no risks taken. Then they get Mike Flanagan. Just see what you can do. Oh my God, it's the best movie ever.
Yeah.
And now he's
This
got
was
to
even
fix
before Flanagan was even really known at that
No, I
point, you
know.
know?
And now he's got to fix The Exorcist.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be a big task, man. That's gonna be a big task for
He's the
sure. Let's see if
cleanup
he can
guy,
do it.
dude.
That's
Imagine that's your job as a director, is you have to come in and fix everything that sucks.
I mean, it shows a lot for him, dude. I mean, his stuff is pretty money though. Like, I mean, I'm telling you, we've talked about this before. Midnight Mass is like probably one of the coolest things I've seen in a long ass time.
Amazing.
It was so freaking good. I was so addicted to it. I thought it was original, and man, it was so cool. So he's the guy's talented, man, and I'm dying to kind of see what he does with The Exorcist because I'm such a big fan of that franchise. But that was what we want to kind of talk about today. We wanted to kind of go back in time with this Platinum Dunes thing. We've been talking on here over an hour in the early 2000s and how important it was to the genre, how important it was to fans of the genre. And they're still kicking today with things like The Purge and, like we said, Quiet Place. But again, I haven't seen a lot of these sequels for Purge anymore. Like I didn't see the last two. I like the ones I saw. Haven't really been following it. I still haven't seen the new Quiet Place, like that prequel one. I still haven't seen that.
In my opinion, best one.
That's what Wes said, and he doesn't say that about anything.
It really, I thought it was really good. I like John Krasinski in the first one a lot. I mean, I watched The Office and became a huge fan, so naturally, that was really why I went to go see it. I think the Purge. I mean, not the Purge. I think Quiet Place is a really good movie, but Quiet Place Day One is like, dude, it is full-fledged popcorn. It is so fun. I really loved it. I thought the second one was fine too, but dude, that's the thing, dude, with Paramount too. Like you talk about Platinum Dunes cranking out. Paramount, if it makes money, they're doing a sequel. They're the only company I know that like does not. They whore everything out, which I love. I'd rather have a bad sequel than no sequel because at least sometimes they're going to be good. Like that's just how Paramount operates. If it wasn't like, dude, they turned a movie like Paranormal Activity into a franchise. I mean, how did you think about that for a second?
Wild,
dude? It's a box set. The box is this thick. Okay, so
they didn't just make one
Paramount.
sequel; they made a bunch of sequels.
So I love Paramount. Like, if it makes money, dude. Like even Smile. Like Smile is the most okay movie of all time. Like it's not great, but like it made money because they were very good at marketing it. So, dude, they make this huge, grandiose sequel. Like that's what they do. Like that's a whole nother episode. Is like how like Paramount is like. They are pimps. Like they are
100%.
going to shove it out there. So,
but yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see. I think this is going to be a polarizing video in itself if people are watching this because I want to know down below, like, what do you guys think about this? Where were you when these movies are coming out? Like I said, Christian and I aren't that far in age now that we're adults, but back then we were at such different parts of our lives. He was a little kid, and I was like in college. I mean, it was so different. So to have you on to talk about this and what it was like being a little kid, seeing a lot of these remakes as the first time you're seeing this, this movie at all, or this franchise at all, is very interesting. Now, is there any that you still have more fondness on outside the remake? Because I'm trying to think. There's no way you like this Hitcher better. There's no way you probably like Amityville better.
Without a shadow of a doubt,
original ones later. Like, was there any time where you're like, I don't see why the big deal was the other one that I saw earlier was better?
Not necessarily, but like I said earlier, when I say it was the greatest time of my life going to the movies, it really was because it was my last era of being a naive person, just going to the movies who didn't walk out and say, man, the pacing of that was like the word pacing never came out of my mouth. I truly, and I'm not hating on that because I get it. Like there's movie jargon, there's the way people talk about movies, but this was the last era of my life before I started watching movies with more of a critical eye. And I can't look back on these movies, even Elm Street, which I'm super critical of, which I think it could have been a lot better. And I can't, if you wanted me to watch that tomorrow, I'd go like, hey, dude, if you want to do a commentary, I'd go do it.
Mhm.
Because it brings me back to a point of my life where I had freedom and no responsibility. It was the last part of my youth right there. Like, that is 2010 is really, like, the last year of my life being a kid, where I could go do what I want. I had money. I had a part-time job, but I could drive. That is the bookend of a part of my life that I can never go back and revisit. So, um, I can't look back at these movies and be too overtly critical or dismissive. I can't. I mean, I grew up with Platinum Dunes. In 2003, when Texas came out, I was like 12.
Mhm.
And then I grew up with seeing in my teenage years was right here, seeing, The Beginning and seeing Friday the 13th. I mean, it was just amazing. It was amazing, and everybody has what I'm talking about, everybody has that era of their life. For you, it's probably Dimension. There's no way you probably didn't see Scream 3 and just have a fucking blast and then go back and say, "Ah, it's not that great now."
Honestly, you know what? I did, but I do feel like my prime theater experience years were probably around this time of things like, um, I would say Blair Witch, the
Urban
Saw
Legend and stuff like
franchise,
that.
Urban Legend, but I do feel like I had a better time in the Halloween Rob Zombie era, seeing corpses and rejects. Like, I feel like that was my era, and even some of these like Amityville, Texas Chainsaw, I remember more having fun with those movies than I even do the Scream stuff. Like, I saw Scream, but like, I mean, I think I was still, you know, a teenager. So college, where it's like, I was more of an adult at that point. Like, I'm telling you, me and my friends would go every single Thursday night and see one of these movies at theater and have a blast. And we were like in our early 20s. So my era is kind of this era. All things considered of our age, is because when I was a little younger, like a teenager, I wasn't watching so much horror. It was there, but like I was going to see Something About Mary and a lot of that shit all the time,
Right.
and renting, older horror movies and stuff like that. So this to me still feels like it was my, heyday of all the buddies of getting together and going to check these movies out every week. So I can definitely appreciate them to the extent, but it's, wanted to go down this road. I know you had mentioned that you had talked about Platinum Dooms earlier, so I don't know if you have that video anywhere. I can link it to hear if anybody wants to check out what you were saying back then.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And
Yeah, we can link it.
always a pleasure, man. What do you got coming up on your channel? You always got something. You always got something over there.
I have a ton of stuff. I've got, uh, Taking of Deborah Logan. I filmed something for that a while
Mm.
ago. I filmed a thing about the Hellraiser movies and how wacky the home releases are, especially the Mill Creek Blu-ray days. So all kinds of stuff like that. But I also want to say I saw Scream Factory. I may do like a physical media thing this weekend. If not, Scream Factory is doing Night of the Creeps, which is no surprise. Everybody knew they would, but
Mhm.
you saw that they're doing another Tom Atkins figure. I think I'm coming out of retirement for the coconut Tom
I
Atkins.
mean, it's so crazy because people were messaging me that today, when I get out of work, and I'm like, shit, I wasn't planning on getting Creeps in 4K,
Come on. I mean, it's
but
coconut Tom Atkins.
But I am a sucker for these freaking NECA figures, and I said him in the white tux or whatever. Like, I may have to bite the bullet. And the sad thing is, that's my third damn Atkins figure repaint or whatever since this.
No, it's just yeah, that's why they're doing it because they don't have to pay the money. Like I've got my Halloween 3 one right there, actually signed by Tom that Sean Clark,
Yep.
spearheaded. So I may as well finish the Tom Atkins collection.
Yeah, I mean that'll be
Maybe
the
we'll get a
third
Maniac
one.
Cop Tom Atkins one day.
Or a Fog, Tom Atkins. I mean, there's so many.
Or
Just change his outfit.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I I love Night of the Creeps. It's one of my favorite, and we've talked about this, I think, on the channel before. Night of the Creeps, but yeah, I wasn't gonna do it, but I might get suckered into it now because of that damn figure. So I'll have to check it out for sure.
Yeah, I think I am. I'm come out of retirement. I don't buy toys anymore. I shouldn't say it like that. I don't buy the NECA stuff anymore just because like unless they put Jason Takes Manhattan out, which like they did 1 through 7.
I know. I don't know
Like
why they
just put
haven't.
out Manhattan
Well,
for
I know
God's
why,
sakes.
but it sucks that we didn't get that one.
Yeah. So I didn't even get the new blood. By that point, I was just like, I think I'm done.
You've got
they all end up
to,
in boxes anyway. So
you've got to cut bait somewhere. I hear you, man. But
yeah,
man, always a pleasure chatting it up. I'm sure we'll do a lot more collabs in 2025.
yeah,
But super cool to go back in time. I like doing these. I like going back in time, talking to some of the people who were experiencing this stuff like we were for the first time. So again, let us know down below. What is your experience with Platinum Dunes? You love them, you hate them. It seems like, we've got both sides of the coin here. Looking at this thing, I actually said it, like we said, it gave us a good time. So, guys, thank you for checking this out. This is Garrett, Born to Be Rad, and like always, stay